In this segment, we're going to cover basic sewing supplies, basic sewing tools. First off, you'll notice that I have all my tools on a mat. This is called a cutting mat. It has slightly rough surface to keep your materials from shifting too easily, and allowing you to use a rotary cutter, which is a round blade that you glide along one of these acrylic rulers. So essentially cutting your fabric like this. It's indispensable when you're using really slippery fabrics or when you want to make very straight cuts. And I use it no matter what type of project I'm working on, whether it's a home decorating project or sewing garments. I use this cutting mat. So the scissors are essential as well. Obviously, you would need to be able to cut your fabrics to the correct length, so you need quality scissors. These are dressmaker shears. These are made by Ginger, and I've had them roughly 10 years, and they're in excellent condition. You could always take them to your knife smith if they become dull, and you can count on them every time if you strictly use them for your fabric, which I highly recommend, never using them on anything else but your fabric. Same thing with your rotary cutters. If you're going to cut paper, keep a blade strictly for paper, but also keep one strictly for your fabrics. Then you've got these smaller scissors just for more precision cutting. I wouldn't use them to cut large lengths. Obviously the blade isn't long enough, but if you're going to cut snippets of thread or hard to reach areas where you need to remove excess fabric, this is for you. Next is your seam ripper. So your seam ripper essentially helps cut through seams that you have already made, stitches that you've already made. Every sewist, no matter how experienced, will make a mistake every project. So this little guy will always be around. Basically, it's got two ends, a short end with a little red dot and a longer one slightly pointed, so you can get underneath really tight stitches in case your tension is too high on your sewing machine. And it also has a little blade here at this groove to help cut through all the thread that you need to remove. This is also a seam ripper. This is a slightly smaller head, slightly sharper end here, but also with the protection of this little ball at the edge, and you have the also the blade end in there. So this one has a cap with a rubber tip, and it helps with kind of just erasing away or whisking away the loose pieces of thread as you're ripping through a seam. This tool in my hand is called That Purple Thing, and essentially it's to push through or to use in any way where you might be tempted to use your fingers. And of course, we never want to get our fingers stuck underneath the needle. We never want to puncture, through our fingers. So this tool comes in handy for just about anything underneath the needle, and other items as well, because you can push out corners, make them sharper, and many other things. Then we have our pins. So pins temporarily hold pieces of fabric together as you're running it through the sewing machine. Without pins, it's very easy for your fabrics to shift and for you to make stitches in an incorrect manner. So you push them through, and as you push the fabric through, you remove your pins. There are also these clips. They're fairly new. I want to say I've probably seen them more often in the past 4 years than in the 30 years that I've been sewing. So they are equally as useful as pins. They have roughly a 1/4 inch between the edge and the back of the clip, So depending on your seam allowances for your project, you could either use pins or you can use clips. So this brings us to pin cushions. So you always want to be able to keep your pins in one place. Loose pins will inevitably cause you to, cause you harm, because you'll either step on it, or if they make it onto the floor, or you might accidentally put your hand where you have a pin, and you want to be able to catch any pins that you might have loose lying around. So this little pin cushion allows you to just use its magnetic force to just pick them up. I find it to be very, very useful. It's called a Grab-It. Then we have our thread. Without our thread, our sewing is nothing. It's just a bunch of pieces of fabric cut together. So here we have a spool of thread. This is all-purpose thread. It's used for a variety of applications. This goes on the top of your sewing machine and through your needle. I wouldn't use it for anything other than joining pieces of fabric together. If you're going to do any top stitching or embroidery, I would recommend you use embroidery thread. Now, the bobbin. The bobbin is probably one of the most finicky little pieces that form your sewing toolkit. So they hold the thread that sits in the bottom of your sewing machine to make a loop together with your top thread of your needle. Depending on your sewing machine, it'll either be a plastic little spool like this, or it will be metal, or it will be metal and have varying little cutouts on the top. But no matter what your sewing machine is, you have to master how to insert your bobbin. So I hope this kind of clears up the types of tools that you will need to get started with sewing. Take advantage of coupons from Joann, from Michaels, and acquire these as you go. But before you begin, make sure that you at least have these tools on hand. It will make sewing a lot more enjoyable.